I walked in on a coworker making out with our married colleague. Should I say something? I work in a local government department in the UK, in a loud and busy office. Our work is demanding emotionally and mentally, and we are quite a close team. This is one of my first jobs after leaving school, so I am a lot younger than nearly everyone. I am only just in my 20s. My nearest aged colleague in my office is 40. I have settled in well though, and made some good work friends. I've now worked in the office for about 9 months, and my job, which was temporary, was recently made permanent, so I think I am doing well. We have a couple of managers who run our team. One of them is new, and one of them, Bob, has been there a while. Before the new manager arrived, one of my colleagues, Alice, was acting manager while a new person was found. I don't know if Alice wanted the job long-term or not, but she seems okay to have come back to the main team and gets on well with the new manager. Alice has been a great support to me, both when she was acting manager and now as a colleague, and we work quite closely together. When she was working as a manager, I thought she was dating Bob. You know when you just get a feeling about something? Maybe it was because I was new to the office, but I thought I could see something no one else could. But it was very much none of my business, so I just pretended not to know, and I've not seen them together so much since Alice left her manager role. However, recently I was working with Alice and Bob, just the three of us. I left for a while to get some lunch, and when I came back, I walked in on them kissing. They didn't immediately notice me, and so I backed out of the room, making more noise before coming back in. They jumped apart, and it was a bit awkward for the rest of the day. The next day we were back at work. I could sense Alice was keeping an eye on me, and things have been weird now for a few days, even though we've both been professional with work matters. I'm genuinely confused as to how to handle this. Part of me wants to stay out of it, like I have tried to so far, but part of me thinks they need to know they are not being as good at hiding things as they think they are. Maybe next time it will be someone else who walks in and tells everyone. Also, whilst I am pretty sure it started when they were colleagues, Bob is now a manager in our team, albeit not Alice's direct manager, and he is married with young kids. I care about Alice, and I don't want her to be the one to get into difficulties if this all comes out. I heard from a colleague in the team that Alice had a nasty breakup of a long-term relationship just around the time I started working at the office, so she has had quite a rough time. Any advice welcome? I have very little work experience, and I really don't know what to do for the best. Do I speak to Alice? Do I speak to Bob? Do I stay out of it and pretend nothing happened when we worked together? Does this kind of crazy happen in every office? Is this something we all just have to learn to navigate? Update 1. I was very confused as to the best way to handle this, as I just don't have any experience in a formal office work environment, and I wasn't sure what to do at all. Things didn't quite go according to plan, but it helped to have that in my mind. One thing I clarified in the comments was that whilst Bob was not Alice's direct manager, he was a manager of our team, and shared responsibility for our team with mine and Alice's manager. I went back to work after the holiday time off and tried to be as normal as possible, especially with Alice. We did seem to be in a reasonably good place, and we only had one awkward conversation where we both acknowledged that the day of the incident had been a strange and uncomfortable day. Alice apologized for that, even though we didn't talk about what happened at all, and said she still very much wanted to work with me and train me. I think I managed to be aggressively normal after that, as you described, and we had a really positive week. Unfortunately, things took a bit of a turn for the worse when Bob came back to the office after his week of holiday. I never had any conversation with Bob about what happened at all, but he seemed to have taken a dislike to me. I could only assume it was linked as we had barely been in the same room since that day, due to the bank holidays and his holiday. It became very clear to me, and pretty soon everyone else, that Bob was determined to find fault in my work. I know I am still fairly new, and my work would not be perfect, but he was not my manager, and didn't seem to have any interest in helping me develop. He just seemed to want to have the opportunity to humiliate me, and he called me out on several, small errors in public settings. Other people picked up on it really quickly and were asking me what was going on, and I felt really awful. I went home several days in tears, but I wasn't sure what the best thing to do was. I decided to just try to cope as best I could, and hope the whole thing went away. Another colleague, we will call her Poppy, came to speak to me after a particularly awful day, where Bob announced in a team meeting that he would be taking on managing Alice, Poppy, and me, much to my horror. She told me to hang on in there, and that I could always speak to her about anything. She suggested I took a day off, and I went and spoke to my manager and took a long weekend straight away. Whilst I was off, I had a text message from Poppy checking in with me, which made me feel better about going back to the office. I went back to work the next week, and it was like the whole world had turned on its head. My manager asked to speak to me first thing, and I assumed I was going to be in trouble over something Bob had done/said/found. Instead, I was told she had decided to move me to join Alice and Poppy's project as a good development opportunity, and she promised we would have a proper supervision meeting soon to talk about what had been happening recently. Before I could process that news, we were called into our morning briefing, and Bob announced he was moving to another team at the end of the week to help them with some challenges they were facing. I had to work hard to hide the relief that I felt at that point. Anyway, I went to work with Alice and Poppy. They are both fantastic at their jobs, and I have learned so much from them. And my manager has been really supportive of me. I genuinely love my job, and I recognize how lucky that makes me. I wasn't necessarily going to write in with an update, but then something else happened that made me realize things had been even more weird than I thought. The role Bob was moved to is now facing redundancy, which was announced to us all last week. According to what I now know, Bob agreed to transfer to this role, knowing he would be made redundant, and he is leaving the organization at the end of July. After we heard this news, I had to travel to our headquarters with Poppy last week for a training course, and we had a long chat. It turns out that she had known about Alice and Bob before I walked in on them, and had been advising Alice to be careful. After the incident, Alice had called her in a panic, and later told Poppy she was grateful for how well I handled it. Based on the information I now have, it would appear that when Bob started to make life difficult for me, Alice tried to get him to back off but failed, and she made the decision to tell our shared manager, and the senior responsible for our whole building, everything about her relationship with Bob and how she was concerned he was harassing me to keep me quiet. The fact that he had finally managed to convince the other managers that he should take on managing me and Alice apparently made it even worse for him, and the whole thing came out to all of the managers on the days I had been advised to take off work by Poppy. Alice and I still haven't talked about the whole mess, but she knows that Poppy has filled me in. Alice and Bob are no longer together, I know that much, but I won't pry any further. She seems to be okay, and the office seems a lot lighter since Bob has gone. I realize Alice did do the wrong thing with Bob at work, and I believe she feels bad for that, but she has never been anything other than decent to me, and she stepped in to make sure Bob wasn't able to cause me any more problems. I think I have learned a lot from this experience, and intend to keep reading everything on Ask a Manager. It is fast becoming my best distraction to read on the train to and from work each day. I have years of letters to read after all.